Welcome to this week's live tarot video from Alchemist Attic. So this week, actually, I'm kind of excited to show you this that just came finally in the mail today. I designed this as a resource for tarot readers. It's called a Tarot Readers Resource Workbook. And so it's finally in print, and they have it here at Alchemist Attic, and also it's on sale on my website, bridgetoa.com, and eventually it will be on Amazon once all of those things update. But what it is a workbook of just blank sheets with guided questions to help you, to kind of guide you through the card, not just the card meanings and the reversed card meanings, because there's both, one side of each sheet for each card. But questions to help you think through, as a reader or as somebody who's learning to be a reader, what the cards mean to you and what you associate them with. Like it asks to, think about a fictional character that you could associate with that card, or a song, or a memory from your life. Because I think that because you can read a lot of, and when I started learning to read tarot, you can look up the meanings on a zillion books and websites and the little booklets inside your tarot deck, and you can memorize those, but it goes so much deeper than that. And this is, an effort to help tarot readers, whether you're beginning or have done it for a while, to kind of clarify their own personal thoughts around each card's meaning. And this can be used for whatever system you use, however you discern meaning, wherever you've learned it. It doesn't give you the meanings, but it allows you to sort of compile your own tarot reading sort of guide. And because I think that no resource is better than the one that you've taken the time to make yourself. So from here on out, when I talk about cards, I'm actually going to go through some of the questions, not all of them, but because one of the things that it asks is a person in your life that you might associate with the card, and I don't want to get that personal on here. So we will protect the privacy of the people in my life. So today's card, if you saw on Instagram and probably Facebook a couple of minutes ago, is the Nine of Swords, everybody's favorite card. Unfortunately, one card that I get fairly frequently in my own readings these days, in the last few years. And so I'll actually just kind of go through what it asks here in the book. So it asks for your preferred name for the card, and I do that because there are, this actually works with whatever deck you use. So even if it's got an extra suit in it, there's a space, there's enough blank pages in the back that you can add that in. If there's extra cards, I've got a deck, the Quantum Tarot deck, which is really cool, but it's got 2 extra Major Arcana cards in it. So it has space for you to add those in. So it'll work with the decks that you use. But a lot of decks call things different, have different names for the suits, or name cards differently, and have, there's variations. Actually, speaking of, I don't know if you can read it, it's always backwards. The bit.ly link there is Fem Tarot. I've got the Feminist Tarot that I'm working on. I have a Kickstarter going, so if you go to the bit.ly link that's /Fem Tarot, it'll take you there. But I've renamed some of the cards, obviously, because if you take men out of the deck, then you don't have kings and emperors. So it asks for the preferred name, but and then 3 keywords which summarize the meaning of this card. And I always learned it as kind of the nightmare card, which is why it's shown as someone clearly having some kind of nightmare. And my rough sketch, this is just pencil sketch stage on this one, is similar. It's basically the same, because I don't think you can get really a lot more clear on the visual imagery than that. And I would call it the next question is, if you could give this card a nickname, what would it be? And I wouldn't call it the nightmare card. I would call it actually the anxiety card. Because the 3 keywords that summarize the meaning of this card for me are worry, nightmares, and anxiety. Because it tends to come up in my life when I'm having not just not just things aren't going well, but I'm constantly worried about what's going on that I don't know about. What are people saying? If I do this thing, is something bad going to happen? I did this thing, is something bad going to happen? It's those kinds of worries that drive those sort of nightmares and sleepless nights and insomnia and all that. And it asks, what person in your life does this card remind you of? Not going to go into that, but I will say it reminds me a lot of me, actually. Not in general necessarily, but I've had a couple of years in my life that have caused me to have a lot of anxiety. And I think that one important thing about this card is that there are times in your life when anxiety is actually justified, and that there are times when things are going bad and there are things to worry about. Not that worry does you any more good, but that it's not, there's a difference between anxiety that is irrational and anxiety that is rational. Neither are good, but we feel those fear feelings for a reason, evolutionary purposes. I mean, it's to not let to keep us not focused on necessarily, but aware of the dangers in our lives. And so we get worried now mostly over things that aren't like physical danger, but are still sometimes very logical things to be worried about. Not saying for my wife, who is probably watching, that everything that I've been anxious about in the last 2 years was logical. Yes. But so, and it asks, what fictional characters does this card remind you of? And I've done some thinking, and then I did some searching on the internet, because I was like, I'm not trying, I can't quite pin down who I would say this is. And one of the suggestions on a list of like fictional characters with, TV characters with anxiety was Elliot from Scrubs. And I was like, yeah, that's kind of, that could be maybe the closest. That constantly scared of what people think or are saying about her, or how she's perceived, or if she can do things, or if she will be, accepted, and all of that it's that kind of sense. Not so much acute nightmares, not like, oh, I had the most horrible dream last night, but this sort of continual sense of I'm worried about things. And then I asked, what memory of your life does this card bring to mind? And for me, it's the last 2 years. I won't go into it, but I've sort of been a high anxiety person for 2 years, trying to figure out what to do about the things that I was anxious about. And that's, I think, the big difference between, I'll get here to the reversed card. It also asks what song expresses the idea, and what book or movie or scene from a book or movie that you'd associate with. And I haven't, I sat here and thought for like 20, 30 minutes just now, and I will pin it down. If you have suggestions for a book or movie or scene or something in fiction that would sort of express that idea, I'm open to suggestions, because I'd like to kind of pin one down. And I'm sure that I can come up with a song. And then if you drew this card in a card reading, what would you tell the client to do? And in this case, with it upright, I would say to, be aware that anxiety and worry can reveal things. I mean, there's a reason people feel worry over stuff, but that you can't let it paralyze you. So it's a caution to, don't fight it necessarily, but, sort of listen to your gut to an extent, but, don't let it stop you from functioning in life. So reversed, I would say the three key words are insomnia, phobia, and fear. It's that, those nightmares and that anxiety that actually sort of cripple you. I would call this the crippling anxiety card when it's reversed. And again, I'm not going to talk about who those remind me of. And there were some fictional characters. I know there's quite a lot of people with sort of agoraphobia and phobias that absolutely keep them from functioning. There's a list. I don't have one on the tip of my tongue that I would go, that's the one for me that conveys. And the reason I ask these questions in this workbook is that I think, as you're learning to become a reader, if you're going to read for other people, it's nice to be able to, when you're trying to convey the meanings to somebody who's getting a reading from you, to be able to pull sort of pop culture references or something that is relatable, because you can rattle off keywords and stuff, and that doesn't necessarily mean the same thing to the other person as it means to you. So when you go, anxiety, like Elliot from Scrubs, and if they've seen them, then you go, oh, okay, like that, and or even just the being able to go like, I call this the crippling anxiety card. It's easier for them to understand that than it is to go on this long explanation, like I'm doing right now. As far as memory in my life, actually, I was telling this story the other day to somebody, because I used to be a lot more in acute situations. I had a specific fear of sort of failing in front of people or making a fool of myself in front of people. So in high school, even though I was a really good math student and a really good science student, there were a couple of times. One was a chemistry thing where we were supposed to go to this special deal, and they gave you like the supplies and like design an experiment to prove this thing. And the other one was, sorry, my battery is low. And then the other one was a math thing where you actually, at the end, the top like 11 people had to actually like solve problems live with a projector, like they could see what you were writing. And my fear of failing in front of an audience was so strong that in both of those cases, I just ditched it. Like I didn't even go, I walked out of that chemistry lab, and I don't know that I put any lines on that piece of paper because I was so afraid to fail that I couldn't even do it. And so it's that crippling anxiety that keeps you from doing things. The song Who Can It Be Now is kind of that agoraphobia that Men at Work song about absolutely not being so afraid of people because you don't even want to leave your house or let them in, or that kind of thing. And if I drew this card for somebody, I would say that the action would be to take measures to deal with the anxiety and find a way to work through it and to still function. Not to, go see a therapist or get on, like, do something. Because it's when it's crippling like that, when this card, everybody goes through those times when you're worried, but when it's crippling, then it's detrimental and far beyond, I think, just a spiritual problem. It's something that you have to actually deal with and find a way to function through. So yeah, if you have any ideas about movies or books or songs that express these ideas, go ahead and post them because I think it would be interesting for everybody. The Tarot Reader's Resource Workbook is available through BridgetOwens.com. There's also links to the Feminist Tarot. At this point, I really, really am begging for Kickstarter support. This is an important project to me in the sense that I feel like, I know it sounds, I feel like the world needs it. I feel like I'm not the only one. I know I'm not the only one that wants a tarot deck that depicts the world in a way that isn't patriarchal, but also isn't, every woman is a powerful goddess. We are also just human beings. And I feel like this just, in a broader sense than me wanting to be successful at it, I feel like this is a really important thing to put out in the world. I've updated a lot of stuff on BridgetOwens.com, so I would encourage everybody to go check it out. And thank you for watching.